Well, with just hours to a by-election in the Talensi constituency in the Upper East region, there are two main leading political parties, that's the governing National Democratic Congress, the NDC, and the opposition New Patriotic Party, the NPP, are both claiming to have the upper hand in the contest.
Well, at the last rallies held by the two parties over the weekend, attended by all the bigwigs, they both sounded optimistic, suggesting it will be an indication of how the 2016 elections will go. The minority parties are meanwhile also not giving up on their chances of taking the seat. They all held rallies in the constituency to wrap up campaigning and to court voters, with the CPP and PNC presenting a common candidate in what they believe gives them a good shot at the seat. Programs coordinator of the Center for Democratic Development, CDD, however, does not share the optimism of the smaller parties. Here's Paul Kojo Abrampa.
The other 6 contestants, to me, the only thing that will face a challenge to the two leading political parties with the emergence of the PNC coming in front of the PNC. That will be something that will bring forth, but it's a straight contest between the NPP and the NDC. And it also gives the bragging rights to whoever wins this very seat. As the bragging rights has started, the Nekufado's speech, as you listened to yesterday, seeks to say that they want to take this seat, one, to honor the chief who has, their parliamentary candidate who has now been made a chief, and it's the first of his kind that because the respect they have for their party and other people in the NPP, they have honored the amount to become a chief, and also to show the citizens the bad governance that is going on by the NDC. The NDC's, as Prof. Mills, Mahama also said yesterday at the rally, it is their seats, and the number of projects that they've put up in Talensi and across Ghana, and the governance that they are putting up to see the welfare of the people will give them the votes. So this will be the major test for them, and this will also prepare them ahead of 2016. So if the NPP wins, it re-emphasizes the preach of the bad governance Ghanaians are witnessing, as they purport to say. And if the NDC wins, it will also counter whatever the NPP has said. So it gives the bragging rights now. If you ask me to predict who is likely to win this election, unless something changes last minute, I tip the two leading political parties, but because of the results of the presidential turnout in 2012, I'll give it to the NDC. It's been the NDC seat. Mosori himself was an NDC before he crossed carpet, and because of that, they had an advantage. So it's up to us to see or realize from these elections whether the vote actually was an anger from the NDC faithfuls who did not like the candidate presented, or it was a punishment to the NDC as a party.
And the CDD program coordinator, Paul Kojo Abrampa, also raised concerns about the Electoral Commission's failure to release the voters' register a week to the election, explaining it leaves more room for speculation.
Hasn't the Electoral Commission brought the voters register to the political parties as enshrined in the Political Party Act and in the Constitution? It says it should be given to them a week before the elections. Why hasn't it done that? That's the problem.
This is a by-election, and the time given them probably might not be enough.
The Electoral Commission set a date. Nobody gave them the time. And secondly, we are not compiling a new voter rule. It is the voter rule that was used for 2012. It's the same voter rule that we're going to use. It's the only addition is the limited voter addition that we did, which of course has been compiled already. So, sometimes I talk of political institutions, I'll talk about national institutions, because you give room for speculation. You realize, and you read the media, what kind of speculations that were coming up. Electoral Commission is in bed with the NDC. The NDC is transferring more vote to aid their winning. Why? Because the Electoral Commissions are giving that window for speculation. What prevents you from issuing the register as purported in the law, so that you win yourself from all these speculations? You might not be doing anything wrong, but why don't you issue the voter rule for them? This happened in 2012, and the political parties complained. Why are you still doing same mistakes? We expect the Electoral Commission, after the long battle in Supreme Court for 8 months, which I term as 8 months silence in Ghana, to start modifying its ways of operation, to start reducing the windows they create for people to criticize them. And some of these by-elections or special elections are test cases for them to prove people wrong. So I wasn't expecting that register to delay for people to get room for speculation. It's not only the register. The law also enjoins the Electoral Commission to publish the name of observers, the temporary staff they've recruited, for people to go. You know why it is important? It's important because then we can protest. Then we can know whether the people there are biased. Then we can tell the background of the people, so that we have a clear, independent people manning our polling centers, so that it cripples the political parties to reading intents of biases after the results have been issued. The Electoral Commission should start learning after the long silence they put Ghanaians through after 2012.
And our lead producer, Kobna Chanchahini Boateng, is on hand to give us a lot more updates on the subject, the back room, especially in the control room. But on the field also, we'll have Albert Sorry feeding us a lot more on the line.
Well, meanwhile, most voters appear to have already made up their minds which candidates they will vote for in the by-elections. Here's our Upper East Regional Correspondent, Albert Sorry, who has been speaking to the electorates, and he's also observed the massive campaigning seen in the constituency, especially in the last few days, had completely subsided.
For the past 1 week, the Tongo Township has been busy with political party supporters singing and dancing to their campaign songs. Vehicles branded with political party colors were constantly speeding on town roads. However, all that seems to have disappeared Monday morning. Some streets within the town were almost deserted. It appears that the Talensi constituents are resting in their homes after attending the mammoth rallies organized by the NDC and the NPP on Sunday. But were the voters convinced by the campaign messages? Some voters Joy News spoke to said their votes will go to the NDC.
My thumb is for BT Baba.
Why?
Because it's because of the NDC government that has put a massive development into my the Talensi constituency. When I came back from school, before you could move from Tongo Market to Bolga, it was full of dust. You couldn't even wear white shirt to go to Bolga. But this NDC government came in 2012, and then they have tarred our road from Winkongo barrier to Tongo Market.
For others, the NPP deserve to maintain the seats.
When I'm comparing the years from 96 to 2000, what the NDCs did, and from 2000 to 2008, what the NPPs also did, makes me to be convinced that when that our candidate, the NPP man, comes to power, he will work. Because it is during the NPP regime that Talensi had a district.
Some others, however, are yet to decide.
I'm still not convinced. And so now, I don't even know the party I'll vote for tomorrow. So tomorrow will decide who I'll vote for.
In all, 39,573 voters are expected to cast their ballots in tomorrow's by-election at 74 polling stations in 22 electoral areas.
And we have on the line our correspondent for the Upper East region, Albert Sorry. A very good morning to you. And currently, do you think that all is set for the election?
Well, yes, all is set for the election in the Talensi constituency. I'm speaking to you from a polling station opposite the Bolgatanga Senior High School. This is exactly where the NPP held their rally on Sunday. There's this primary school there, and there's a polling station. People are already queued. The election officials have set up the equipment, but you know, voting officially is supposed to start at 7 o'clock. So obviously, they are just waiting for the time so they can start voting.
In all, how many of the polling stations are we talking about that are likely to be on stage for this very by-election?
Yeah, we're talking about 74 polling stations in 22 electoral areas, and we are expecting 39,523 voters across the constituency.
It's good that you talked about the voters, Joe, because the parties early on, as well as civil society, had been raising concerns about the late submission or the handing over of the voters register to the various parties. Is there a concern prior to the start of the vote for many of the party representatives at the polling stations you visited?
Well, this came up last week at the MPP's press conference. It appears that has been addressed, so it is no longer a concern at all. At this moment, from what I'm seeing, no one has complained about anything yet. And we're just waiting for the voting to start. And then if there are any problems, I'm sure it is then that we'll be able to tell But once the voting has not started yet, there haven't been any concerns at all.
The last 14 to 15 hours has seen media reports also authenticated by the Communications Minister, Dr. Amani Boama, about a purported, is it phone message or phone audio, and also a text message that seemed to suggest that there were some skirmishes likely to be perpetrated, allegedly, by the MPP. How is that making rounds in the voting grounds?
Well, you know, there have been a lot of accusations and counter-accusations between the NDC and the MPP since last week. These things have been going on, but, you know, like I said, it's very early yet. That is yet to have any effect. We are looking at when the voting starts, then maybe if those accusations are anything to go by, we may see some evidences. But for now, I have not seen any evidence of the accusations that these two parties have leveled against each other.
Based on experience, if you're a reporter and you're reporting a certain constituency, sometimes you get to identify certain flashpoints as far as the polling areas are concerned. Have you identified some of those areas that you would want to keep a keen eye on?
Well, one flashpoint will be the center of the constituency, which is in Tongo, because in the center of the town, you have the offices of the two parties, the NDC and the MPP, not too far from each other. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, when I was interviewing people, you know, in that part of the town, I realized that, you know, at the point that is closer to the MPP's office, if you stopped anybody and tried to speak to them at random to find out who they'll be voting for, a lot of them easily tell you MPP. Now, if you go towards the east, where the the NDC's office is, and you speak to anybody, most likely they'll tell you they are voting for the NDC. So, you know, that part of the town, you know, is concentrated with people, a lot of people who are supporters of the two leading parties. So, it's one flashpoint that I'll be keeping my eye on, and then see what's going to happen.
And before we let you go, though, with the areas you visited, is the security ready, and are all the necessary arrangements by the Electoral Commission also ready before we let you go?
Yes. Now, I'm still observing this particular polling station from which I am reporting, and, well, they've set up the equipment. What I can see is that they are putting up the place where the voters would stand to vote, and the queue is already in place. What they are waiting for is 7 o'clock, and I can see that Barima Osei Asare has just arrived at the place, and he's trying to find out, you know, what's going on. So, in terms of security, yes, I can see 2 police officers who are stationed at this particular polling station. The people who have turned up are less than 20, you know, talking about minus the election officials who are here.
Well, thank you very much. Albert Sori is our correspondent in the Upper East region, giving us a lot more update from that very by-election taking place at Talensi. It will be an interesting one, Mamavi.
Yeah, definitely. It's amazing because Talensi wasn't as popular as it is today. Suddenly, I mean, it's like whatever is happening in Talensi is a reflection of what's going to happen in 2016. Amazing.
I guess we all have to keep our thoughts until perhaps midday, thereabouts, halfway into the election, and then we can also start making our own assumptions, so to speak. But let's turn our attention to some other stories, and this time concern state attorneys, as they have declared an indefinite strike action over what they call poor conditions of service.
Well, over 150 lawyers at the Attorney General's office say they are tired of the disappointment and contempt shown to them by the Finance Ministry, having started negotiations for over a year. This follows a failed meeting with the Chief of Staff, Julius Deborah, at the Presidency, and a subsequent one with the Deputy Finance Minister, Ato Forson, yesterday, Monday. A member of the aggrieved lawyers, Charles Ofori, told Joy News' Chifa Bampo there was no consensus reached with the two men, and they had no choice than to lay down their tools.
Tired with the government disappointing us since some of us started work with Attorney General over 3 years ago. And actually, we started this negotiation beginning of last year, January 2014, last year. And today, we met Honorable Mr. Judgement Debts at the presidency. And he even led us to Minister of Finance, still to see to it that we are able to resolve this matter amicably. There was no consensus. So
when you say everything came to nothing, what do you mean? That there's no opportunity for a pay rise or the other things that you're demanding?
Let me quote the Deputy Minister for Finance words in extenso. His words are that they are now setting up a committee, a matter that we have been negotiating for 1 year.
So, Mr. Ofori, if you're saying that the Deputy Finance Minister indicated that they're to set up a committee, they manage the public purse. Why not give them some more time to address that then?
The matter is simple. You have petitioned against a body that seeks to resolve labor issue between two parties. The body that is established by law to negotiate or resolve the matter has invited the relevant parties. And that party who, without that party, the dispute cannot be resolved, never attended. What do? Do you go to heaven?
Meanwhile, the Commissioner for Judgement Debts wants government to establish a permanent commission to supervise the payment of judgment debts in the country.
Justice Yawapo, who has since the completion of his work been appointed Supreme Court judge, says the establishment of the permanent commission is the only way to avoid losses through undeserved payments. Between 2009 and 2012, government spent about 600 million cedis on judgment debts payment alone. The recommendation is contained in his report as sole commissioner of the Judgement Debts, which Joy News has intercepted.
The commission is concerned about the increasing amounts government spends on the payment of judgment debts yearly. Between 1996 and 2004, the total amounts paid by the states as judgment debts totaled a little over 2 million Ghana cedis. In 2005, government paid 483,000, while it paid 26 million Ghana cedis in 2007. In 2009, judgment debt stood at 67.7 million cedis. In 2010, 275.917 million cedis was paid, while in 2011, the state lost 217.971 million cedis as judgment debts. The report says the commission strongly recommends a permanent institution like the present commission to play oversight role in the handling of judgment debt cases. This organization, among others, will coordinate all government institutions that are involved in the handling of judgment debt cases to ensure efficiency and transparency in the payment of such monies by the states. Again, this institution would have to investigate all default judgments, consent judgments, and judgments on admission entered against state institutions via the Attorney General to verify the authenticity before payments are made.
Meanwhile, a former Attorney General and Minister of Justice disagrees with the recommendations.
Papa Wusuankoma tells Joy News government must rather focus on strengthening existing state institutions.
Well, I take it as an expression of concern by the Commissioner with regard to the judgment debts and the approach to settling those judgment debts. Firstly, I would say that payment of debts owed the state is a normal procedure within the function of the state. Probably the concern has been the delay. The delay basically is because the state has limited funds, and even with budgeted resources, there are so many ministries, departments, and agencies that at the end of the year don't get adequate resources to enable them discharge or perform their duties as expected, and the programs that have been approved. But what I can say is that, well, setting up a permanent commission per se may not necessarily be the answer. What is really needed is to fine-tune the system so that when recommendations are made for the payment of certain sums of money, certain procedures are gone through by the relevant agencies before payment is effective.
The Food and Drugs Authority, that's the FDA, has vowed to wage a relentless war against persons who smuggle fake medicines or drugs into the country.
This move follows the confiscation of cartons of fake Vermox dewormer tablets in more than 20 chemical shops across the country. In an interview with Joy News, head of the Drug Enforcement Unit of the FDA blamed the influx of substandard drugs on the porous nature of Ghana's borders.
The Food and Drugs Authority says its post-market surveillance team impounded more than 21 boxes of the fake drugs in over 20 chemical shops across the country. The FDA says the fake Vermox dewormer tablets lack the active ingredient required for deworming.
If you have a worm infestation, because the medicine is for treatment of worm infestation, it means your condition will not be treated. It will not resolve. And so you might have the worm overload, which sometimes can lead to nausea, some kind of ill health, can also lead to anemia, constipation, or diarrhea. All those issues are there. Those are the risks that you face. Especially children may have a lot of problems with those ones.
Thomas Amezru blamed the influx of substandard drugs on the porous nature of Ghana's borders and also advised pharmacies, licensed chemical shops and the general public to vet every drug they buy on the market.
Our borders are porous, and so anything can come in, and we don't have control over the borders. We have some few border posts, but it is not possible to police all the borders. It is not possible. So the smugglers also know their way around, so they're able to smuggle them in. That much happens in every country. It's not easy to police your borders. But as far as regulatory structures are concerned, we have adequate structures in place to deal with it. That is why, in the first place, by regulation, we demand that medicines come through only 2 ports of entry, the Tema and the Kotoka International Airports, so that there can be adequate oversight. When they are coming in, they will be examined, the permits covering them, the documentation covering them, and all. If we had any suspicions, we can still sample and then do the necessary quality evaluations.
It is estimated that over 60% counterfeit goods is imported annually into Ghana. The absence of technology to check this has hampered efforts to curb smuggling of fake drugs in the country. In an effort to bridge the technology gap, the Food and Drugs Authority has acquired a battery-operated device that shoots different wavelengths of light at a product to determine its authenticity.
So we have the fake Vermox here. Can we find out its authenticity?
Sure.
Okay, so let's see how that works.
So it's now doing the data acquisition.
Now it is analyzing the data.
Yes.
I see.
So it tells you it failed. So since it failed, we want to know what it contains.
Okay.
So it really contains the required ingredient.
Yeah.
What does it
So we are now going to look at the details.
Yes.
All right.
Now the details is the system is telling you that it contains 84% cornstarch.
Wow.
And 2% 3-ethyl amino toluene.
Which is also a solvent, and that is carcinogenic.
What is that? I understand the cornstarch, but the second one?
The second one is an organic chemical, and it's carcinogenic.
What does that mean?
It can cause cancer.
In furtherance to this, the FDA intends to equip its personnel at the various borders with the handheld counterfeit detection devices to ultimately reduce drug counterfeiting in the country. Ridwan Karim Dini Osman, Joy News, Accra.
Meanwhile, a public health expert is asking the FDA to do more than to just check the influx of fake and substandard drugs coming onto the market.
Dr. Dennis Botte says the intake of such drugs has dire consequences on the health of the public and therefore the need for increased surveillance.
Substandard fake medicine, whichever we want to call it, has dire consequences on the individual as well as on the population as a whole, and even on the health workers themselves. If you are taking a substandard medication, which things have just been put together anyhow, and the active ingredient is too much, then the effect or the side effect that you are going to suffer, or people are supposed to suffer, would be again too much for the body to tolerate, compounding the problem. Now, this is going to mean that the health problem of the first person is not solved in the first place, and if it's running through the population, they are going to have more people being sick, and therefore a greater burden on the health care system. So these and other things, if you extrapolate it, you see how vast it can go in terms of the effect that substandard medications can have on us.
Well, Dr. Bote also describes deworming after every 3 months as a myth, explaining it is not really necessary for adults.
So ideally, when must one take a dewormer?
Well, I mean, there are some times that we do a nationwide taking of a drug like albendazole or mebendazole, parasitic things that we do a nationwide. Everybody should take a dewormer. Fine, it's a preventive thing. But the idea of taking it once every 3 months, I won't pontificate on that. I think it's a myth. I mean, if it's for kids, I would say, okay, fine. I mean, the kids are always playing, and some of the kids, they stuck their thumb, they are putting. So that one, I may think that, okay, you can just go ahead and do it. But then, the thing about going to hospital and always looking for a dewormer, you may be putting chemicals in your body that the body doesn't really need.
Also, remain in the health sector, as Kintampo in the Bunafu region has been named as the second town to host the Ebola clinical trials after Hohwe in the Volta region.
Well, this was disclosed at the Sensitization Forum in Ho, organized by the University of Health and Allied Sciences and the Food and Drugs Authority. Parliament, in calling for the suspension of the trials last month, suggested that not enough public education had been done. Principal investigator Professor Fred Benka stressed on the importance of the trials, explaining it will strengthen Ghana's capacity to engineer its own drugs.
News of the trials generated controversy among residents of the host town Hohwe in the Volta region amid fears that volunteers may be infected with the disease which has not yet been recorded in the country. Parliament thought more education and engagement among stakeholders and residents was needed to allay the fears of people. Consequently, Principal Investigator Professor Fred Benka is assuring Ghanaians that the trials will not harm citizens, but rather shield them in case of another outbreak. He adds the Uncle Sakas's Research Center in Hohwe, since its establishment in 1986, has supervised over 30 clinical trials.
The WHO developed a phase 1 trial facility in Hohwe in 1986, where they started testing all the drugs that today we use in onchocerciasis treatment. So people know that there's an onchocerciasis center in Hohwe, but they actually never knew what that center was doing. So the Hohwe site over these past 3 decades has conducted over 30 clinical trials, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 trials, both for onchocerciasis drugs, some malaria drugs, and have worked with several international partners and local partners, including the Djibouti Memorial Institute for Medical Research. So that's why Hohwe was chosen. The University of Health and Allied Sciences had taken over the onchocerciasis unit and had revamped it and was poised to continue the good work that Hohwe has started over the years.
He explains selection of volunteers will be carried out diligently.
They must meet an eligibility criteria, and in this case we're looking for people aged between 18 years to 50 years old. They will have, as it goes through the process, will have an informed consent, including a test, understand whether they understand the things that they are told. They'll go through a medical history, they'll do a physical examination, and they'll do a battery of tests to make sure that each of their body functions are perfect. If they're not, if they fail of these things, even the volunteer, they cannot be part of the trial. Because we want to make sure at the end of the day that people who are injected with the vaccine are healthy people, so that when we test them frequently and we see any changes, we can ascribe it to the vaccine that was injected rather than the fact that they were already hypertensive, they had diabetes, they were obese, and so on.
72 volunteers between the ages of 18 and 50 are needed to participate in the vaccine trial. Though the selection process has not begun, some students of the University of Health and Allied Sciences have expressed their willingness to volunteer.
I think that I can go and I'll personally volunteer if I can to take part in it. I believe that science is evidence-based. To make things work for all of us, we need to come together as a country and support the people.
But before they are selected, they would have to undergo a test of understanding to ascertain their knowledge of the vaccine trial. Meanwhile, Dr. Amma Edwin of the Ethics Review Committee of the Ghana Health Service has stressed the rights of volunteers will be safeguarded. Fred Kwame Asare's report for Joy News.
Both passengers and operators in the aviation sector have cautioned a recent introduction of a 17.5% tax on domestic airfares could prove counterproductive to efforts to grow the sector.
Well, the tax introduced by the Ghana.Revenue Authority effective July 1, 2015 has increased the fares by that percentage. Though the operators have argued against it, they say they have no option but to levy passengers until the Ghana.Revenue Authority advises otherwise. Here's a report by Derek Ecclesam.
The implementation of the tax followed the presidential assent granted the Parliamentary Act on December 30, 2013. The domestic flyers who for years have seen air travel as the easiest and most comfortable way to transact business and attend to personal issues are not amused. But despite the fare increase, they insist air transport will still be their first option.
Yeah, at the end of the day, as far as that is taking money out of my pocket, you don't expect me to be happy. So definitely I'm not happy. But what my understanding is that has to do with VAT. I mean, when they keep on increasing, it definitely is going to affect people that are going to use the route.
Apparently it's not, because when I inquired from the service provider, I was told there's an increase in VAT that has made the fares go up. So I don't know if the government can do something about it for us.
They'll be taxing you on a ticket. It's very wrong for government to do. It's a very wrong. Seriously, I'm not happy by the way about the words I'm using, because I can't even talk because I'm very angry.
They, however, believe a scrapping of the tax will be appreciated.
To help more people to travel, because maybe I can afford, but there may be others who will also want to travel on the same way, but because of the increase, they will have to look for an alternative.
They should even bring the price down even to the level that, you know, internationally, how people will accept it. They should look at what's the name of the international patrol.
We need to looking at the affordability. How many people, looking at the current economic challenges that we're facing in the country, if we keep on increasing, how many people are going to fly? You know, gradually it's deterring people from flying.
Their cry for a decrease has received the backing of James Eric Entry, the Chief Executive Officer of Domestic Operator Stabo.
Either of them is good. Either total suspension will be great, why not? But the reduction too will also be appreciated, yes. Well, initially it's maybe about 5-10%. Between 5-10% is okay, but 17.5% is a hoping, you know, is big. It's big, looking at it. And then for the passenger too, it's such a big increase. And I don't know, the choice of flying, will be something like you have to be able to afford it from the very top. You know, now the people down there who were also experiencing, enjoying the flights, some of them may not be able to afford again.
Mr. MP explains why the tax introduction comes at a bad time. He tells Joy News not even their latest offer of buy 4 tickets, get 1 free can save his company from losing customers, as has been the case in the last 2 years.
Well, we have things for our, passengers, the frequent flyer passengers. We have introduced what they call the buy 4, get 1 ticket order. We all do it, but hey, they are the frequent flyers. Those people, they always fly anyway because that's their business, because of their businesses. But those ones who come in once in a while to try, they are the people that we concern, because they would probably stop coming, or maybe they won't be coming as often as they would have wished. It's a problem.
And I'm sure that would have a toll on you.
Yes, that is our major concern. Our major concern is to stay in business. We hope that people will be in a position to buy the tickets so we can also stay in business. We hope that the economy will stabilize so that people will have jobs to do. They can also afford to travel by air or move around freely with our aircrafts. This is what we are praying for.
The passengers also believe having a state-owned airline is the way to go now. From the Kotoka International Airport, Derek Ekosam, Joy News.
Well, so that'll be it for the news. And again, please stay tuned to this very channel because we're going to give you the latest update as far as what is happening, is going to happen minute by minute, hour by hour, and also for the full period of that very by-election at Talensi in the Upper East region.
Okay, so one thing I'm discussing that I'm passionate about, we're talking adolescents. So if you're a mother, if you're a parent, a guardian, you want to stay tuned to this conversation. And if you're an adolescent as well, we're talking, it's all about you. How do you take care of yourself well? Because we know that you're prone to certain diseases at your age. If you're a parent in particular, you might want a few tips on how to handle your adolescents, but we have to make way for Kwame Jomo Ajimai. He's got a lot more sports. Yesterday, Serena Williams beat her sister Venus in that clash, which shouldn't have happened anyway. It wasn't fair, but it was a beautiful game, by the way. Kwame Jomo Ajimai has got details for us.
So do stay on. We'll bring you a lot more sports.